T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to episode 45 of Citizens of Tech. For the uninitiated, Citizens of Tech is a science and technology show that explores the gamut of content that appeals to the kind of people who ask, how does that work? Whether it's renewable energy, electric vehicles, the latest CPU tech, DNA, gene hacking, 3D printing, movie quotes, terrible puns, or any other nerdy fodder, that's our wheelhouse. We know that you're just itching for ways to support the show. Well, fear not, because there are numerous ways to support Citizens of Tech. Support us on Patreon. Seriously, $1 a month does add up. You can share the show on social media. And of course, you can buy stuff through our Amazon affiliate link on the website. It costs you nothing and gives us a percentage of the dollars that you are already going to spend. First up today, we've got, have we lost our ability to think critically?
So here's the story. The story is a study was done showing that scientific publications that were the original scientific study that was published are cited frequently, but rebuttals to those original scientific papers are not referenced. And therefore, the assumption is if I am publishing something in a scientific journal because I've done my research, that's just going to be taken as verbatim. And that's my work is going to be cited and so on, even though the whole idea behind posting something publicly like this is that it gets peer-reviewed, right? This is part of the scientific process.
Yeah, so you could publish an article that says, you know, the sky is pink, and people are starting to cite that article. Okay, maybe not the sky is pink, but if I then come along later and give a rebuttal to your study that says, no, it's not, and here is why, the topic of discussion here is that your scientific study is the one that's going to have credence lent to it.
And this seems to have to do with the way that science is published in journals. Okay. So you publish something in a journal, and it's rebutted later, but then from the original work that people are still looking at and referring to, they don't have any easy way to know that there were rebuttals that were done. And so there's some discussion of, well, maybe when a rebuttal is published, it should be appended to the original article. That way people who are citing the original article know, oh, there may be other opinions that are worth citing and to be included as part of research.
So it's almost like scientific publications should work more like Wikipedia?
It's something like that. Something like the web, this whole hyperlinking thing to take off, really. But really, this got me to thinking. It's like, okay, you know the joke meme, Eric, right? About I read it on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah.
Only that's the thing, right? Because I mean that's a joke because that in fact is the case. If we read it on the internet, we kind of assume that it's truth on some level, right. That it's worth accepting.
It's at least worth maybe entertaining the idea. Yeah.
Okay.
At the very least.
At the very least, right? And you tend, if the source looks authoritative, you tend to just take it verbatim. So as someone who is a writer and a podcaster and has to do a lot of research, I have to be careful about this. Mm-hmm. So case in point. I'm interviewing someone for a podcast who is a subject matter expert, and they make a claim about a competitive product or something that they're an expert about. If they say it's so, I kind of assume it's so.
You take it as gospel.
Because they're the subject matter expert and supposedly they've done their homework, and that's why I'm talking to them and they're not talking to me, because they're supposed to know what they're talking about, right?
Sure.
Okay, but then sometimes it's happened to me over the years that someone will come at me and go, yeah, but come on, they said this. I actually had someone tweet at me the other day. I was listening to the show until this part, and then they said this, and I just tuned out after that.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like, okay, so you have to, there's still an impetus on me as the person publishing this content to have enough knowledge about the subject to be able to call shenanigans when they're out there. Okay, so I think this is really indicative of what's going on the broader internet, maybe for all of us, where I just wonder, are we starting to lose our ability to think critically? We're flooded with information. If it appears to come from authoritative source and it sounds plausible, we just kind of accept it.
Right.
Do you think I'm wrong?
No, I think that's, generally speaking, very accurate. It's almost the consumer mindset, I guess. There's an easy headline here that's, tweetable or, whatever other social media that is the method that I'm trying to broadcast information that might be interesting to other people. And so to then fact check that is, I would actually have to read and confirm stuff. It's a lot easier to just click the tweet button and hit OK.
I've started digging a lot deeper and tried to do more and more fact checking on things.
Yeah.
Whether it's for this show or any of the other shows that I record, trying to make sure I'm dealing with an authoritative source on that information, which is harder. It takes time, and then you find conflicting opinions. If I'm a researcher and I find a journal that supports my opinion or supports other findings that I have, yay, look, I can cite this independent article that was published by this scholar or this researcher. That that's easy.
It's not
much harder to also deal with the rebuttals.
Yeah, exactly. There's an authoritative person out there that agrees with you or at least leans in the same direction as your presupposed position.
Well, okay, so here's another thought. I was brought up this way as well. I think most kids are. You kind of look at the authority figures in your life, and you are taught to just accept. Because if your parent or your policeman or a teacher or your pastor or something says something to you, because they're in that position of authority over you, you kind of learn to accept and to trust. And so on, and you're not even expected to think about it. And if you think about it too hard and ask too many questions in certain settings as you grow up, you might be told to kind of shut up,
Right.
So I think maybe we carry some of it with us from childhood, but with the overwhelming amount of information that we have coming at us via the internet and via television and via radio and podcasts, etc., being able to think critically about what you're hearing becomes, you have to be discerning about what you hear somehow. I don't have an answer for how to do that exactly, other than it's like, this has become a thing in my head where it's like, it's so easy to assume this is true. And maybe there are situations where you shouldn't be assuming it's true. You should be skeptical and be, I wonder, and fact-checking and doing your own homework. So,
I'm of the persuasion that you should always be skeptical.
Oh, so Eric, the June oven, what is this thing?
Yeah, so I titled this, Say That's a Nicely Spec'd Mobile Device You Have There. And so this is designed by a former Apple employee. It has a 5-inch multi-touch touchscreen, wireless N connectivity, a quad-core 2.3 gigahertz CPU, NVIDIA graphics, 2 gigs of DDR3 RAM, CD-quality audio, a 1080p camera with 30 frame per second video. And I mean, that sounds like a decent tablet device, right?
Well, it's called an oven.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like laughing as I'm reading down. You're reading down the specs. I'm looking at this thing, going, is it actually an oven or is that just a joke?
Well, that's the thing. I was like reading all the specs and going, wow, that sounds like a nice tablet. And then I got to the weight, 45 pounds, aka 20 kilograms. It's like, yeah, no, okay, it's not a mobile device. It is indeed an oven. So I'm coining a new buzzword today. Software-defined cooking. Because this thing features temperature sensors and that 1080p camera with 30 frames per second video. It utilizes a quote-unquote food recognition engine, which is a high-definition camera paired up with powerful hardware and software to bring you the most advanced food recognition possible, which it will actually identify that you just put chocolate chip cookies in, for instance, and will automatically set the correct temperature and time for chocolate chip cookies and begin the baking process.
If that 1080p camera at 30 frames per second detects that the cookies are on fire, will it back the temps down?
I have to assume yes, but I'm not sure. Because it's actually doing real-time analysis of, the cookies have spread X amount, and it's sending updates to your mobile device. That's the killer here. The killer app is the app.
Keep going.
Okay? Keep going. Move along. Mm-hmm. It has 4 built-in weight measurement devices, a.k.a. scales. So apparently probably on the 4 corners of the baking surface, it'll actually weigh the contents and adjust temperature accordingly, things of this nature. Okay, it can cook a 12-pound turkey, which that's legit. Like, it's not a big device.
But it's big enough to hold 12
But it's
pound
big
turkey,
enough to cook
which
a
isn't
12
a huge bird, but it's
No.
a sizable piece
I mean,
of meat.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent. I mean, it's not a 20-pound Thanksgiving turkey. But yeah, you put temperature sensors into your turkey, and it will monitor the internal temperature and tell you when it's done automatically, send you messages and all this. It uses 6 carbon fiber heating elements and is actually engineered such that while it's in use, you can actually touch the surface, the outside surface of it, so it's kid safe and all this. I don't know about the door, but the outside, the top and the sides of it are safe, are touch safe. Yeah, it's all about apps here. It on that touch screen, which is a multi-touch enabled capacitive touchscreen, you can select recipes and it'll list out all the ingredients, and you whip together the recipe, pop it in, tell it, I did that, it's in there. It recognizes that it's actually in there. It'll start the baking process. It has 2 fans for convection baking. All this, like, this thing just sort of has blown me away.
You wait a minute. You're attracted to this thing? You think this is like cool and if money were no object, you'd want one?
It is literally the first smart, quote unquote, smart appliance that actually looks cool to me. Like, looks useful. The fact that it will send me a notification on my smartphone that says, "Oh, hey, we're 5 minutes out from dinner being ready," or whatever, is brilliant to me. It's not a buzzer going, dinner's ready. Yeah, that's not. It doesn't do anything for you.
Admittedly, the stove in my house plays this goofball little tune that my wife hates, to the point that when the goofball little tune goes off, she will go, "Yep, I'm coming," and she gets mad at the oven until she goes up and shuts the thing off when it's done. But dude, the smart oven or June oven, whatever, it just takes all the pleasure out of cooking to me. I don't want it on my phone. I mean, okay, so I don't cook much. I cook a little bit, and mostly it's at a cooktop, and I'm making something simple like just eggs and sausage, or something simple like that. I cook a lot of breakfasts. Or I make chicken soup. I do things like this in the winter. Things that, again, pretty simple to assemble, and there's a certain visceral pleasure that comes from judging the heat and getting it right and not overcooking the meat, and getting the vegetables added at the right times, that the whole thing ends up to be this enjoyable experience. If this thing with its 1080p 30 frames per second camera and its automatic recognition of what I just put in the oven and all the rest kind of does all that for me, it's kind of like and then it's dinging on my phone that I don't want to get notifications on because I have too many notifications already. I'm just looking at this thing going, is it cool? Yeah, it's cool, and you can upgrade it, and now you can cook pheasant, whatever. It's like I get it, but I totally don't get it, I mean, dude, there was a thing I saw, I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not, but there was a toilet seat. You sit on it, you take a dump, and it can tell you by weight how much you excreted. For real.
Really?
That's a thing. And this oven is better than that, but it's in the same kind of chapter, for me, of these things that are just doing more for me than I actually need.
I will give you that I don't need this device. And at $1,495, I will not get this device. But I love the technology that it's using, right? I love the optical recognition and the fact that it's identifying, 5 minutes out from being done, and okay, now we're done. And I do like the fact that, sometimes I do want to just cook and have that sort of, like you said, immediate sort of feedback from whatever you're cooking. And
do you actually like cooking, though? It's a different question, because some people hate it.
I actually do.
Yeah.
But there are times where I just want to set it and forget it. Did you ever see that infomercial?
Yeah.
This is like the logical progression of set it and forget it. I want to be able to just pop something in and walk away, and then have my phone remind me, "Hey, idiot, don't burn this," or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, there are perks to it. But again, at $1,500, it ain't going to happen for me. This is definitely a different tier of...
Yeah, I mean, it's not... I mean, that kind of money's not, super top end, like a Viking range with
Sure.
6 burners and maybe two oven bays and so on, which would be 3-5 as much as you want to spend dollars, but it's still a lot.
That's
lot. I think the cooktop I have is it's got 5 burners and a stove and a place underneath to store some stuff.
Yep.
It seems like I think it was around 1,000. And it was a
Yeah,
lot.
and really, this thing is a glorified toaster oven.
Because it's not a full range size. It doesn't have a cooktop. Right.
It's an impressive device, but it is just a glorified toaster oven that you can bake. You can actually do full baking in.
You don't think we're going overboard with this Internet of Things for the house, though? All this residential sensors and stuff. You don't think that? I mean, do you really want everything talking to some app on your phone, beeping and bonging at you and giving you notifications?
No, I don't. I am not really a fan of Internet of Things, to be honest. This is the first Internet of Things thing besides my Nest Home Protect, which is my fire smoke alarm, that has ever caught my attention enough to be like, oh, yeah, I kind of can appreciate why that's appealing. But, like, all the other IoT stuff out there just seems like needless integration to me. It's hot. Okay, I'll turn down the thermostat or I'll turn the air conditioner on. Like, my body has sensors built in. I don't need Internet of Things things. I guess that's my, thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution have built these sensors into me. So therefore, I don't need a computer to tell me, I don't know. But yeah, no, for some reason, this just appealed to me. I don't know. Maybe it's completely irrational. It probably is, but
I don't know, man, because I get techno-lust too. So, I mean, it's not like I don't know what you're saying. It's just this isn't that. For me, this wasn't that thing.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for you.
Something next week I'll get all excited about.
Like cars, perhaps.
Like cars, perhaps. So, for example, this isn't an Internet of Things exactly, but there's an article here about a factory that is making cars with what they're calling immediately in time parts manufacturing. So when I was in college,
step beyond just in time.
Yes. So in college for me, which goes back about 20 years back to the early 90s, I have a business degree alongside of a computer science degree. And in that business degree, one of the things we studied were manufacturing techniques, and just in time was part of that. And the whole big idea of just in time was, let's say you're an auto manufacturer and you've got pieces and parts coming in from suppliers all over the place, and you have the pieces and parts come to your factory just in time so that you can assemble the vehicles that are rolling through your production line.
And for the past 25 or so years, this has been the new hotness, right?
Well,
like in the manufacturing world.
It's, as I understand it, I'm not in manufacturing, but that is a standard way to do business. It came from Japanese culture. It was adopted, and we've been perfecting it over the decades. And just-in-time has been a standard part of manufacturing because it means you don't have to carry enormous amounts of inventory, and you're not asking your suppliers to oversupply. So you're reducing your expense as the manufacturer by not having more parts than you actually need.
Yep, less overhead.
And you can control your supply chain very effectively, but it requires a very specific control over your operations and over your factory floor, over your supply and demand, et cetera. It's kind of a big thing. You can't just it's a great idea. It's a complicated idea to make it all work. A lot of moving parts have to fall into place to make just-in-time effective.
But when it works very, very well.
Okay, so next stop here would be this immediately in time thing, and I'm reading in Ars Technica about a Toyota plant in Texas that does things this way, and maybe there's a lot of plants that do things this way. I'm not sure because the article wasn't entirely focused on that, but that certainly caught my attention. Most of the suppliers are housed right in the factory, apparently.
Oh, wow.
And so they don't even have to ship the parts in, which was for the just-in-time, 20-odd years ago. That was a big part of the logistical equation, getting the parts from the supplier to your factory in a timely fashion. Well, if you've moved your supplier manufacturing part, if that part of your supply chain is right in-house, that logistical problem has now gone away.
It's literally immediate.
And part of how they're doing this as well is they are designing and building the car virtually right in the factory. So we know about CAD, computer-aided design, right? So they are actually building cars virtually, testing all of the parts in the assembly process virtually, making adjustments when things don't go well to the virtual parts, to make sure that the assembly process is going to go well, right? They assemble it all vertically or virtually. They're using what would it be like if you're a human working on the assembly line with this part, trying to put it together? Does this work or not? Or do they need to make things a different shape, or align the holes a different way,
or it's 73 pounds and that's too heavy.
All of that stuff is modeled, and then any changes that need to be made are made before they then commit that part to a supplier to manufacture it for them. So for one example of how this has been helpful, Toyota was working on a Tacoma design. It's a pickup truck, and they made a grill. And in the virtual testing of this grill part, this is like a front grill for the vehicle, they found that it didn't flow enough air, and there was a spec required for that engine where it had to have a certain amount of air
for the
coming through the
cooling.
front grill.
Sure.
If it didn't meet that spec, then the engine would overheat, blah, blah, blah. So they were able to retool that part, that front grill, with bigger holes so that now the flow spec was met. And that all happened before any manufacturing was done, and they found this problem with overheating vehicles out on the road. Kind of cool.
Fewer recalls.
I mean, so
less
really,
overhead for we produced 100,000 of these and now they're garbage. We have to recycle them and start over.
And so that's all, to me, that was all very cool. The virtual assembly stuff, I'm not surprised about that in the sense of, computer-aided design's been around a long time.
Yep.
It's a very mature thing now, with lots of very powerful tools that let us do that. The virtual assembly makes sense. Handing it off to suppliers in-house. I didn't know we had suppliers in-house. That kind of was like, okay. Maybe makes me kind of wonder what all I should read up on the gigafactories that Tesla's doing. I'm kind of curious to know what all they're doing in-house because of the sheer size of those facilities.
Right.
But it was cool. Okay. Now, one thing I can tell you about modern cars, I've worked on older cars when I was younger and had older, let's say mid-90s cars. You could work on those things.
Yep.
Not as well as even older cars like
60s,
from the 80s or 70s. Yeah.
Clean the carburetor, and when fuel injection came in, it got a little more
and the
complicated.
computers got involved. It got harder, but there was
and...
still stuff you could do. So, for example, I used to own, I think it was a 95 Thunderbird. It was a V8, had a 4.6 modular engine in the front. A lot of fun car to drive. Little, not geared real well. It was an automatic and so on, but it still had lots of punch, a lot of low-end torque, about 280 foot-pounds if I remember right. And that engine had so much room in the front that when the water pump let go, I replaced it myself.
Yep.
I was able to get in there, get the serpentine belt off, get the water pump out of the block, put a new one on, and get everything reattached, and it was fine. It was, I was able to do that.
Even as an untrained 20-something.
Even as an untrained 20-something,
yeah.
Right? Brakes. I've done a lot of brake jobs in my life.
Sure.
That was pretty easy to do.
Yeah, you get the manual, you get the right wrenches and tools, and you just go at it. Yep.
Lamps, headlamps, tail lamps, any marker lights, any of that, those things are usually really straightforward jobs. Well, they used to be really straightforward jobs.
Yep.
But the way they package cars now, the way they assemble cars and put them together, the shade tree mechanic, me and you in the garage working on cars, dude, I don't even try anymore. Honestly, I don't try.
I cannot even imagine trying to work on my car.
So there was a comment in this Ars article from someone who was bemoaning this fact, like, geez, if they can do all this virtual assembly stuff, maybe they can start to virtually assemble some serviceable parts so you can change the headlamp. So for example, I have a 2004 Forester.
Yep.
And I wanted to put the headlights in it. The stock headlights were pathetic, and I put in brighter headlamps in that car. Nothing exotic. I simply replaced the bulb with a brighter bulb. Okay, to do that, I had to take the battery bracket off on the driver's side to be able to get at the stupid thing because there wasn't enough clearance to be able to get at it. Why is that?
I had an early 2000s Forester as well, and it was the same exact thing when I wanted to replace. The headlights would always go out for some reason on the driver's side, the vibrations or something. And just trying to replace the actual bulb was just a project and a half.
I wanted to do the fog lamps on this car, but I've read about the project, and people that have done it have taken pictures of it. You can't get at it. It's not really designed so that you can take the headlamps out. And these are bulbs that do burn out and need replacement from time to time. And this is just, anytime you go to work on a car now, replace bulbs, it's a complex mess of plastic and fasteners, and if you can get your hand in there, there's really cramped quarters and sharp edges of things.
Even changing the oil, specifically in the Subarus, the oil filter is in an awkward spot oftentimes where you really kind of can't get your hand in there. You need a special tool to do it, and it really helps to be on a creeper underneath it or have the car elevated. And
I know it's packaging, right? I know it's got a lot to do with...
cram the most in as you can, and the most,
And some of it's got to be safety related. These older cars, I'm sure, especially when big was in fashion.
Yeah.
You can work on a mid-'80s Crown Vic, baby, because there's so much room. You can practically stand in the engine bay.
Get in the engine bay.
And do your thing. Now it's like, No, especially if it's a horizontally opposed engine. Absolutely no.
Yeah.
It's just everything's crammed up against up in the fender well.
Yep.
And it's I guess I kind of commiserated with that guy in the comments because I'm going, I really wish that some of these things, especially the basic things that you'd think an end user could deal with, like headlamps. Come on, guys, really? I got to be taking battery brackets off to be able to change the stupid headlamp bulb? Couldn't you have given us, another half-inch of clearance so we wouldn't have to do that? Just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Radio. With the radio, how many of us want to replace the radio? Dude, the way the dashes are assembled now with the fully integrated with everything, you can't replace that thing.
It's such a pain.
And even if you can replace it, if it's a replaceable like single or double DIN unit, it's hidden behind some custom piece, and it's
little retaining clips that break, and it's kind of a nightmare.
It's not good. So we're whining.
Yeah.
Because we like to work on things, and our cars are not things I want to work on anymore.
Citizens of wine.
So I'll pay someone else to work on my car these days. I just can't be bothered. I haven't done a brake job in a while. I've been figuring, come on, I can't have changed the brakes that much. I should still be able to do a brake job, right? But
Probably.
I haven't actually tried.
I don't know.
I mean, discs, pads, calipers, how hard can it be?
Generally speaking, I get rid of a car before I need to replace the brakes these days, so I don't know.
Yeah, Mr. I have a Chevy Volt, and it's all regen, and I don't even use my brakes.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Slack is dead. Long live Slack. What did you find here?
Yeah, so Slack, I mean, we were just talking about this tonight before we even, sort of sat down to hash out what we were going to talk about tonight. Slack is amazing, right? Also, it's not really dead, just in case anyone was worried. It's still king of the hill in the messaging.
I'm in like 8 or 9 groups. So I thought it was 8, and then I was looking. I think it's actually 9 groups I'm in. So
it's ridiculous.
I'm keeping it alive by myself, if nothing else.
I think I'm in like 3 or 4, but I'm not quite in the same league in Slack addiction. Anyway, yeah, we were talking about this tonight. Slack is amazing. The problem is if you get into a larger team, there are limits, right? There's a 10,000 message limit. There's a data limit, the amount of file attachments and all this. So if you have a team larger than, say, 5 or 10 or maybe 20 people,
are these for the paid accounts or the free accounts?
Well, for free.
Oh,
for free.
Okay.
So you start hitting these limits, and you have a limit on how many integrations you can have. The Slack bots that you can integrate, which do amazing things. The problem is, like, I looked into this for my day job, and we were faced with somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 a month for all our users to have paid Slack to get rid of these limitations. Right? You get messages. You're out of storage space. You're at 10,000 messages, so messages start falling off the back end, etc. So I actually stumbled upon this. I wasn't even looking for a Slack replacement, but mattermost.org. They describe themselves as, quote, an alternative to proprietary SaaS messaging, a.k.a. Slack. Mattermost brings you all your team communication into one place, making it searchable and accessible anywhere. It's written in Golang and React.
Oh, boy, Golang, the new hotness.
Yeah, I know, right? And runs as a production-ready Linux binary under an MIT license with either MySQL or Postgres. And so it's open source, which immediately made my ears perk up. It is actually Slack compatible, but as they say, quote unquote, not Slack limited. So you can use Slack webhooks and integrations. You can import your Slack teams and users. You can import your public channel history, and you can even mimic your custom Slack themes.
I have a suspicion that they just heavily leverage the Slack public APIs.
I'm
to
almost
make that happen.
certain that's exactly
They
what
have
they've
to have
done.
replicated that functionality.
Forked
because
the public code.
That's how a
and-
lot of that would have worked.
Yep.
Even I don't know how much of is there a lot of Slack public code?
I don't know to what extent there is.
But even if there's not, they could have just looked at the public API library from Slack, which is pretty well documented,
and
just replicated that functionality.
Exactly.
Which would, although that's going to be a job of them to keep up just as soon as Slack starts screwing with the APIs and new revs. But well, anyway, we're just speculating.
Yeah,
so.
no. So basically, they have mobile apps for Android and iOS. They have desktop apps for OS X, Windows, and Linux. The server itself will run as a Linux binary, so
So you do have to supply the server. There's not some Mattermost in the cloud I'm connecting to like I do with Slack.
I think they actually do provide that service, but the big lure here is you can run this, you can roll your own and run it yourself. Manage it yourself, not worry about, it being in a public cloud or whatever. I do believe that they provide a software as a service solution through this, but I'm not 100% sure because the only thing I was interested in was the roll it your own. So yeah, it runs as a Linux binary. So we're talking about, you spin up an Ubuntu box or a CentOS box or whatever distro of your choice. It also runs inside of a Docker image as an OS X binary. They have an Amazon Elastic Beanstalk app that you can deploy. There are installers for Heroku, Puppet, Kubernetes, OpenShift, Cloud Foundry.
Cheapers.
Everything under the sun. They're releasing monthly feature updates. It has dozens of community.
Is there some vendor behind this, like some big name, or is it just a bunch of dudes?
It really just seems like a collective that wanted an open standard that worked interchangeably with Slack, and they wanted to emulate what Slack was doing with an open source license behind it. I didn't find a corporation behind it.
Because a lot of these open source projects, there's some
Oftentimes.
big corporation or two that are behind it, and then there's some commercial offering, blah
Sure.
blah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's these community integrations and applications, including Jira, IRC, XMPP, Hubbot, Giphy, Jenkins, GitLab. The list goes on and on. RSS Atom, many others. You can build and share your own apps using the Mattermost APIs and drivers.
All those integrations are already. Oh wow!
Yeah,
already
those
there.
are what already exist. That's the crazy thing. So I've been messing with this a bit in a sandbox, and it's really, really slick. Like if you sat down at it and looked at it, you'd sit down and go, "Oh, this is Slack," and it really works, and it looks like Slack with some minor customizations. Self-hosting obviously allows a lot of flexibility. There's unlimited storage. You're only limited by the size of your disk. Unlimited integrations. So if you have a bunch of bots,
I was just going to ask you that. If I've written a bot that I need to check into a channel and do something,
yeah, no limit. You just
because it works like Slack in response to the Slack APIs.
correct. Yep. And there's no cost for any of it because it's open sourced. So the flip side of this, as with anything else, is self-hosted. You're gonna have to deal with your own headaches, right? If something breaks, you got to fix it. Yes, there's probably community support. Maybe there's even paid support. I didn't honestly look into it too closely. So I guess the question is it worth it for you or for your organization to self-host what is essentially Slack? Or is it easier to let Slack handle things even if you have to pay for it?
It's actually a more complicated question than it sounds like, because some of the nerds are going, I'll build the server tomorrow, and we'll be running Slack internally. But what Slack or any SaaS application gives you is that ability to, if you assume that the people you're running, that are running that application for you, have dealt with resiliency and availability and performance and all of those things, and that they are doing that part of the job well, what is the motivation for me as the company to take on that burden instead? Why do I want to run on my own service? Maybe privacy, maybe control is a thing. Cost control, the issue you raised, $600 a month versus build it myself and do it myself.
Essentially free, right?
Yeah, kind of free. I mean, you can quantify that cost.
My time costs money.
Your time costs the money.
But it's already paid for by the company, right? My time is already paid for. So if I can do it in the amount of time that I have on a given day and maintain it on top of all my other responsibilities, then it's less of an issue when it comes to line item budgeting.
Okay, but there's a SaaS philosophical question here, though, because not to be mercenary, but if I'm a company, I can look at you and go, well, if I can outsource Slack to Slack and all these other sources to all these other people, I don't need you anymore. And maybe that's cheaper, and maybe that's not, and maybe the loss of control is worth it, and maybe it's not, et cetera, et cetera. And as I was watching a video today on serverless applications and how a developer wants to, developers in general, some developer wants to be able to develop applications without having to deal with infrastructure people. And someone else is making the point that doesn't mean you've lost the responsibility for the availability and performance of your application. You still have an operational function that you have to perform in order for that application to deliver to your users what's expected. You just can't say, sorry, we outsourced it to the cloud. So it isn't, all that simple.
Shrug emoticon.
Right. But, so the is it worth it question is really a big one. And I think it's the question that the next 5 years is going to tell us, maybe 10 years is going to tell us what the long-term future is of enterprise infrastructure versus public cloud. This is a great example of this because the nerd in me goes, like I was joking before, I'll have a server running tomorrow, and on Mattermost.
Oh yeah, no, we looked at this, and within an hour we had a Mattermost server spun up.
But the other side of this for me is me running a much smaller company with only 4 employees. We own nothing but laptops. That's it. Right. Everything we do is in the cloud. Yep. All of our documents are in Google. We have a content delivery network we use for podcast delivery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything, our accounting system, the whole 9 yards is all in the cloud. There's nothing that runs on my computer, my laptop, that I couldn't grab another laptop and still do my work.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's some minor software exceptions, video and editing
but
software.
But no showstoppers.
No.
Stopping the business from functioning.
Not for the core of my business. Anything that serves my customers is all in the cloud.
And that's the beauty of the cloud.
It is exactly the beauty of the cloud.
Yep.
I can pick up and travel to the West Coast or to Europe or wherever I need to go for work, and I can still do my job with my laptop with no problems.
You could go to an internet cafe and do your work.
And do on occasion,
right.
And do exactly that. So I mean, it's all trade-offs, and it's not as simple as to me. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be check in a couple or 3 months. I'll be curious to know if you guys decide that Mattermost is a platform that works for you, and you decide to commit to it, what you end up doing to make sure that it performs and it's available, and you've got backup and how much storage you commit to it, and what the actual dollar cost of the project becomes if you can quantify it versus $600 a month to Slack. It would be a really interesting case study.
Yeah, I have no idea if we'll actually pursue it, but it's a really appealing alternative for a budget constrained organization that wants all the fancy widgets and features that Slack Premium provides. So it'll be interesting to see.
I'm impressed that some group of people did all this.
Yeah.
I'm also in the back of my head going, if you just emulated Slack and their public APIs, is there intellectual property or copyright violations that Slack at some point is going to go, we're nice people, but you really screwed up.
We're not that nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do wonder, because that is an impact to Slack's bottom line.
Yep.
They're not in it for fun.
Right.
Maybe they are, but some of the cute messages you get on Slack, they wish you a nice day and so on, make me think, well, these all have a great attitude, these people.
You're here when you sign in. You're here. The day just got better.
Exactly. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, on to Iowa. We hail your energy prowess.
The state of Iowa, of all places, is a leader in renewable energy. So, I mean, it is trendy right now, right, to get energy from renewable sources. And this is a big deal because, of course, our modern way of life, the world over, even in no matter first world country, third world country, you fill in the blank, energy is a huge part of the equation in this life. And we need a way to maintain that modern society when the stuff we're burning now runs out.
Yeah.
Oil and coal, particularly, are not renewable resources.
Or when we finally all decide that the stuff that we're burning, we may not be out of, but we should probably stop.
We should probably stop.
It's like going to the buffet and being, there's more food there, but I really shouldn't eat it.
So you were showing me that XKCD comic that I since he is a science nerd, or a math nerd, I think technically, I'm presuming the data is accurate, but it just shows that graph from about 20,000 BC on up to the present day, and the temperatures, right, of low, kind of
ebbs
low,
and flows
rising
a little
and
bit.
drops and rises, different ice ages and stuff that come through from what we know of geology and so on. And then you get to basically the
Industrial Revolution, basically.
Yeah, like 1900 into 2000 and then beyond. And the way the graph of where we've gotten to today for global temperatures, it looks like a hockey stick.
Yep.
It's a very sharp increase.
Yeah.
And does appear to correlate directly with the fact that we're burning all the stuff we find on the ground.
Yep.
So, okay, back to renewable energy. Fossil fuels are not renewable. And if, we look at climate change and global temperatures, it seems very probable that the reason the Earth is warming so much is because of all the burning that we've been doing. Then something that isn't that and is renewable would be great. And hey, Iowa, you're all about harvesting wind. That is a thing. In going on in Iowa, and Iowa's made huge strides with this. So if you look at this article comes from Slate. I'm quoting these stats from there. In 2008, Iowa generated a mere 4% of their energy from wind, but in 2015, 31.3%.
Wow, of their total energy.
Yeah, comes from wind.
Good
Can you
on
believe
you,
that?
Iowa.
And, well, if you think about why, though, the why is Iowa is a big flat state with a desirable wind profile. So there's wind blowing across this state, and it's flat, meaning you can stand up wind turbines.
And they don't even have to be very tall.
And they're turbines that can cover lots and lots of these flat acres.
You'd
so
be kind of
easier to
stupid
maintain.
not to do it.
I mean, we have wind turbine farms around here in New Hampshire.
But they're all up on the top of mountains.
A pain to maintain.
And they're huge.
And we have terrible wind profiles around here mostly, except up on those ridges, which is where, why those little farms are there. And by little, I mean they're small.
Yeah, 2,000 foot.
Yeah, small is in not that tall, and then small is in not that many turbines that are feeding electricity into the grid. So you get more like dozens of turbines, if that, versus like Iowa's now got a proposed project that they're calling Wind 11. This is Mid-American Energy is the energy company there.
As in it goes to 11?
I don't know. It's just
we're turning our wind power up to 11.
It's Wind XI, which is Roman numeral 11. It's a $3.6 billion project. This is brand new. This is going to be beyond the 31.3% they're already producing in Iowa. That's wind. This $3.6 billion project by Mid-American Energy has been approved by the Iowa Economic Resources Bureau, whatever the state agency was that needed to do that. And this project is going to stand up 1,000 2-megawatt turbines. So we'll end up with 2 gigawatts worth of production out of this farm when it's all said and done. And it's supposed to be done by 2019. That's like 3 years from now, let's say.
Wow.
This thing should be done. And at that point, in 2019, Iowa would be up to 40% of its power coming from wind.
That's remarkable.
40%. 40%. That's amazing. It's a huge number.
That really, really is. Like, I can't even wrap my head around the amount of energy that is. I mean, Iowa doesn't have, 20 million people living in it. I don't know what it is, but I guarantee it's less than 20 million.
It's corn and soybeans.
Right. Corn and
That's what lives in
soybeans
Iowa.
with a side of people.
Yes,
Right.
pretty much.
Iowa is people.
And I don't think, one of the things I remember from reading in the Slate article was you're not losing much farmland when you're standing up wind turbines. You can still grow stuff in those fields.
Even right next to it and underneath it, because they don't block a lot of sunlight even.
So therefore, this is just it's a windfall. Sorry. It's a great way to use the land. To me, the flat ground means that those turbines are accessible and maintainable.
Right.
You can scale this thing out for size because you've got, they call it flyover country for a reason. You fly over and you look down out of a plane at what's going on in Iowa. It is literally fields and fields and fields and fields and fields, and that's it.
Right.
That's what you see.
And
there
like
are no mountain
one
ranges.
city and the rest is fields.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow,
So
that's incredible.
But it is, to me, it's such a, you look to the future and go, where are we going to get our energy from? And all these renewable sources keep going. We've talked a lot about solar on the show. Solar is getting more efficient. We're finding better ways to store and capture that energy that we get during the day to help us during the night.
With the off-peak generation, right.
And it looks like eventually the economies of scale are going to come down so that residences can afford their own solar. Add to that wind. Add to that hydro, which we've been doing for a long, long time.
Molten salt energy storage.
Geothermal.
Yep.
And all of these things add up to, when the coal's gone and the oil's gone, or even if it's not gone yet, we'll be like, yeah, we got it sorted.
We're good.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
It's all good. So that is encouraging, because it used to be something I actually worried about. Crap, we're at peak oil.
Right.
Man, energy production's going down. Barrels of oil, we're not producing as many as we used to. And I don't know that we've actually hit peak oil yet or not, because that depends on who you read and who you talk to and what the latest discoveries are. But there's been a lot of talk that maybe we've hit peak oil. This isn't a long-term problem. We are getting this problem solved, and it's going to happen in the next few decades, it looks like.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, very exciting.
Well, on to content I like. You found something that you're...
So this is, I don't know how tech this is, but it's a little tech and it's a little nerdy.
It's electric.
I am learning to play bass guitar.
Okay.
So for years I've been involved in music, mostly vocally. A lot of church related choral singing and song conducting, and these kind of things. So I can read music reasonably well.
Reasonable. Yeah.
I know time signatures and intervals and these sorts of things, but I've never played an instrument. I've never had an opportunity to actually learn, or taken the time to actually learn an instrument, and bass guitar has always fascinated me. I've owned one for a long time, never put the energy into practicing. I've finally done it. Content I like then, talkingbass.net. So at talkingbass.net, you can learn to play the bass guitar. Lots of free lessons, videos online, articles, and so on. Lots and lots of free content that's there. And not all of it is free. There is some stuff that's subscription-based for $180 a year. I'm paying right now an actual instructor $75 a month for 4 half-hour lessons per month, which I don't think is a ton of money. So by comparison to that, $180 a year is really cheap.
Yeah.
You can buy music books. I've got a few books I've collected now. They're going for between $10 and $15 a piece. For music and theory books and method books that get you through the instruments.
Yeah, it's not hard to spend in the neighborhood of $1,000 a year on instrument lessons.
So it's long story short, talkingbass.net I discovered is just a great resource. I've watched a few videos now. When I get to the point of, I'm still very much a beginner with sore fingers from mashing the fretboard like I have marshmallow fingers instead of actual fingers. I don't know. But, I may pay $180 a year for talkingbass.net because the content there's so much content there. And what I've seen so far was just excellent, just really well done. And the guy explained himself well, and the video was clear, and you could see what he was doing on the instrument, and I was impressed.
That's excellent. And just as a neophyte guitar, not bass guitar, but guitar player, no amount of lesson content will ever get you to a point of being good unless you actually put the time in.
Oh, yes.
But this serves as a resource. So
the more I practice, the better I get, but it's still a slow go. Tell you.
The more I practice, the more I realize how bad I am.
Pretty much. Eric, have you learned anything today?
I did indeed learn something today. Today I learned that the coconuts used as horses in Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail did not start out as a joke. They decided to use them because the film did not have the budget for actual horses. Which just goes to show how awesome of an improv team they were.
Oh, it's a priceless bit of visual comedy.
You got
hear
2
them and hear
hours
them,
of
and then you
coconut.
finally see them.
You're banging them together.
It's just great. It's so funny.
Did you learn anything today?
I learned that the 5-second rule is a lie. That's the rule. If you drop it on the floor, food on the floor, and as long as you pick it up before 5 seconds, you can still eat it, and it's okay.
Sure.
That's a lie. If you drop
18-second
something
rule
on the floor, picking it up, whatever is down there, is probably a big mistake. I mean, it all depends on the food and the surface, just how fast it's going to pick something up. But if you drop it, you, in almost all cases, should leave it there, because science, they actually did a study of this. And the only thing that was that would, survive more than 5 seconds without picking up something horrible off the ground were gummy bears.
Well, they're invincible anyway, right?
Apparently.
I mean,
apparently.
Antibacterial gummy bears. Well, that wraps it up for today's episode of Citizens of Tech. We want to thank you for listening and remind you that you can head on over to citizensoftech.com to listen to our entire back catalog. And we hope that you'll be here for our next episode. Until then, have a great week.